Hey you, and welcome. In this video, we will start building a new project with Create React App to start working with the components that we have already learned to solidify some of that learning and also learn a bit more about navigation and form validation. So that's what this project is going to be about. And in this video, we're going to start that project. So let's dive right into it. In order to start the project, remember we were using Create React App. I'm going to continue using that. And in the Get Started or in the Hamburger Icon docs, I can search for TypeScript, and that's the template I want to work with. So that's the command I'm going to copy and paste it in my terminal. In my current terminal, the present working directory for me is the home directory and the code directory inside that home directory. So that's where I'm going to run this command. You can of course run it in a different area if you'd like, or follow along. Instead of my app, I will call that contact app and run that. So that should install the dependency that we need to get the Create React App working. Great, Create React App is ready. I will go cd into contact app and run npm start. That will start the server for me, and I will open another terminal to run other commands in. So in this case, I will do code space dot. Remember, I'm in the contact app, so that's where I'm going to do code dot, and that should start the code VS Code for me. And I will do command Shift P to open the simple browser and take that to http://localhost 3000. That's where my app is working. And there we go, app is working just fine. I will split the screen between index.tsx, which is the root of our application, and the simple browser, and hide my file explorer. So that's our environment up and running. Let's add Chakra UI to our app. So in order to do that, I have the Chakra UI documentation open. I'll click on Get Started and copy over the first command that it provides us and go over to my terminal. In the contact app, I will paste that in, and that should install Chakra UI for me. With Chakra UI installed, let's make sure we follow the second step of installation where we have to wrap our app into Chakra Provider. So I'll copy the first line, and the other one I will just type it myself. So I'll go back to VS Code, and on line number 2, under line number 2, I'll paste that and wrap the whole app in Chakra Provider like so. Done. Perfect. So that's Chakra Provider integrated with our app. Of course, nothing really changes because we haven't styled anything using Chakra components. So let's do that next. I will introduce you to Chakra Templates. That's another website. It's a community managed website. And here you can find different templates that may be useful to create a website. And in this case, templates for navigation is the one I'm looking for. So that's the one I'm going to click on. And in the navigation, there are two options on the left-hand side. There's a nav bar, which is the one at the top usually, and the sidebar, which is on the side, like a drawer. And that's the one I want to work with, the sidebar. So I'll click on sidebar. There's two options. There's a sidebar with nav bar at the bottom and a sidebar. I'll work with the sidebar only. I don't need the nav bar. So in order for me to work with this and copy paste the code, I can click on code button on the top right, and I will copy over all of this code. So let's go all the way down to right here, copy everything, and then in my VS Code, in the File Explorer, I will start a folder called Components. And inside that, I'll create a file called root.tsx. So this will be the root of my application. I'll paste all the code, hide my File Explorer, save. And notice there's a few error messages. One of them is related to the React Icons library missing. So I'll copy that React Icons, not the /fi, just the React Icons. And I'll install that. So npm install React Icons. Oops, it didn't do that properly. Clear that out. Copy. Or let me copy it from here. Maybe it's not copying properly. So I'll do that manually. npm install React Icons. That should install React Icons and get rid of that error message. Now the server needs to be restarted because a new library has been installed and it doesn't really catch that. So I'll just close my server, Control C, and then npm start again. That should start my server. And with the server restarted, I'll go back to VS Code, refresh my page, and it's rendering just fine. Of course, the Chakra component is not mounted, so we have to mount that as well. So I'll do that next. I will first, before I actually do that, let's refactor some of the code because I did notice that there's a few things that may be outdated or just not how I write code. So I'll just change that up. On line number 1, let's take away unused variable, which is React, and React node. Let's remove that as well. We don't need that. I'm pretty sure it's going to create trouble, but we'll fix that up. And scroll down to where the component is. So export default. I'm working with name export, so I'll take that away. Change that to const, take away function. Change this to an arrow function. That's not necessary. It's just a code convention that I'm going to follow. Always be consistent with the way you write code, so you can always make sense of what's written. Take away the type. And then remember, in the previous components we have been writing, we always work with function component type from React, and then diamond brackets props with children is how we get children. So that should fix that TypeScript error. If I save this, everything should just work okay. The component, instead of calling it simple sidebar, I'll call this root. And I think we're good to go. All right, let's go over to app.js or app.tsx. And in app.tsx, let's remove everything in the parentheses and return, and instead import from components root, and it's a named export, so it will be destructured out like so. It's a self-closing for now. I will provide children later, or may even be self-closing on a root level, and I'll save that. Great. Our render for sidebar is just working okay. Now I am zoomed in a lot on my screen, so it's showing the drawer as collapsed. So I have to expand it by clicking on the hamburger icon on the top left, and it should bring the sidebar for me. And if I close it, it disappears. So that's a good functionality. We will make a few changes to it by adding, removing some of the items like logo we don't need, or we don't need the icons with the messages, but we do need these buttons to allow navigation. All right, let's do that now. I'll remove some of the unused code and then line number 1 and 2 of app.tsx, clean up the code a little bit, and let's go back to our root.tsx. And in here, let's make a few modifications. I'll make the browser a little smaller so we can see better. The modifications would be that wherever it says logo, I will take the logo text away, leave the close button as is, and maybe the text will be a self-closing component, like so. And if I do that, the logo should disappear from our sidebar. I can leave the logo up here, that's okay. Maybe rename it. I'll call this contact app. Save that. So that's our contact app title in the nav bar there. And for the buttons here, I do want to remove the icons because I just want the names of our contacts showing up here. I'm going to click on the name. It should take me to that contact details. So how do we do that? Let's see where we have the icon right here. So every link item has an icon associated with it. An icon is the JSX element and is coming from React icons. So I guess what we can do is either just repeat the icon. That would be one solution here. If I remove it, let's see how it's probably going to complain, but we'll find out what it complains about. Okay, and then TypeScript can take away icon as well. And down here, there's an error message. I can see that because in my IDE on the right hand side, there's a red highlight right there. So I have to scroll down to that highlight and see what it's complaining about. In this case, link icon is missing. So I will say empty JSX. Would that satisfy this? I don't know. No. Save. Null does render, but it doesn't satisfy the TypeScript. So if I do null as any, that may be the hack here. All right. So just for the time being, I will use that. Perfect. With that gone now, I want to create a provider which will be wrapped around the entire app, and that will provide us with the contacts that are currently in the state. So let's do that by creating the use context API that we have worked with before. So I'll start by creating a new component, call this contact context. That's an interesting name, contact context. And I will import React from React. This is going to wrap around our whole app. Export const, call this contact context. I'll hide the file explorer here. Context provider first. Contact provider would be the one thing that we need. And it will return a null. Let's TypeScript it. So it will be a function component. Function component like so, diamond brackets, props with children, like that. And destructure children out of it and return in parentheses a fragment with children. All right, perfect. So that should just render out whatever it gets as is. There's no functionality just yet. This is just boilerplate. And I will then export const context, and this will create context using create context function from React. I will type the interface for this context. So I'll do interface I context. Yeah, let's work with that. Interface doesn't like that. Okay, there we go. I misspelled it. All right, so first thing would be it's an array of contacts. So contacts, and this is going to be an array of something, and then that would be another interface. So let's do interface I contact. Contact can have a name, which is a string type, a description, which is a string type, and we may add more later on depending on our requirements. So I'll just say this is an array of contact types, and I contact context should be passed down here. And this would be an object type which would have contacts, and it will be an empty array to begin with. Then we can also add other functions like add contact later on when we want to provide CRUD operation, but for now let's keep it as is. I will provide some contacts to render out. So let's just provide some dummy data, mock data to start working with. So an object start, and I will say name would be John in string, and description would be a guitarist. All right. And then another object with name Sally, and description would be a singer. Singer, not signer. And comma right there. Okay, perfect. So that should create some default context for us, mock context for us to work with. Now we do have to start the provider. So we have to copy the name contact context right here. And instead of a fragment on line number 26, we'll say contact context provider. Same thing here, contact context provider. Oops, copied too many times. And save that. That should work okay. And then next thing would be is that we have to provide the values. So in order to provide values, I will store it in a state, so that way we can change it later on. So I'll start working with useState hook inside this component. So useState, auto import that, and I will destructure the tuple. In the useState, it will be an array. And let's destructure this out, or actually abstract this out into another component or another name. So I'll say initial contacts, and it will be an array, and I'll provide the name to contact array. So this is typed, and we will use this variable in two places, one in the context and the other one in our use state to initialize the state. A state will be a type of iContact array, so everything is typed. And then we destructure tuple, we make it contacts, and set contacts. We will not use set contacts for now, but in the values for the provider, I will provide an object which will have a type of contacts, which is an array of contacts. All right, let's save that. With that done, let's start consuming that in our sidebar. So I will save my code so far and close out the contact context. Oh, I do have to wrap it. I forgot that portion. Let's go to index.tsx, import relative path components, contact context, and destructure out contact provider, and wrap that right after chakra provider in case we want to ever make UI components inside that provider. Great, everything is rendering just okay. That means our provider is working. Next thing would be we start consuming the values that is providing. So in root.tsx, we will start by importing, or actually we will auto import that. So let's go down to where our linked items are. Linked items right now are outside of the component, so they're not in the lifecycle of React, which makes it difficult for us to work with. So let's see how many places this link items is working. I will find that out. 87. Okay, so only line number 87, that's the only place. So we can actually move this inside our component to build it inside the React library or React lifecycle. So let's copy this over and paste it inside close to 87. Let's move up a little. So this is under sidebar content. I will paste that in here. And let's start working with use context hook, and provided the context, auto import that, and destructure out contexts. And now we have to give it a little bit of a treatment to make sure that it works with our link item props, which ask for a name. So I will say, instead of an array of already existing objects, I will loop through map every context, so singular contact, and I will return you an object, so parentheses and curlies to return the object. I could do curlies and then return, and then another curlies to return the object, but parentheses, curlies, just a quick way to return the object within the same line. And I will say name would be equals to contact.name. Now this wasn't really necessary if the type of sidebar item would be the same type as the contact, but in my case, I just wanted to have it more explicit. All right, with that done, let's save it. Let's see how it looks on the sidebar. We now get John and Sally. All right. In the next video, we will add navigation so we can click on these buttons and see how it lands. I'll see you all in the next video.